Applicability. So part one is applicable to all service providers, regardless of type, size, or the nature of services delivered. We have covered this. It is sector agnostic, but there's a clarifier. Part one is intended for service management of services using technology and processes. So while service agnostic in the broad sense, the standard is most directly applicable where technology and processes are involved in service delivery. So what does this mean practically? Pure professional services with no technology components are not really the standards target. A consultancy delivering only advice, no managed technology, no operational service infrastructure is not a typical applicable case. But almost every modern service has some technology component, IT services obviously, but also financial services, healthcare, communications, logistics, retail, public services all rely on technology platforms that need service management. A bit of practitioner application. When advising on applicability, the test is whether the organization provides services that depend on managed technology and processes. If yes, the standard applies. If the answer is genuinely no, pure consultancy, pure advisory, applicability is questionable. Edge cases worth noting, and software vendors, they provide products, not services in the standard sense. A SaaS provider, for example, does provide a service and the standard applies. A traditional licensed software vendor providing the software but not operating, it does not fit easily. And then in terms of reseller scenarios, a reseller that takes responsibility for customer-facing service delivery, even using upstream providers' technology, can apply the standard. Other parties, a critical concept for scope decisions. Other parties can operate processes or parts of processes within an SMS. The service provider is not required to do anything in-house. There are three categories of other parties. One is suppliers, who are external organizations under contract, and then internal groups, which are parts of the wider organization outside SMS scope, and then customers acting as a supplier. This is a usual case where a customer takes on supplier-like responsibilities. The standards principle: accountability cannot be outsourced even when activities are performed by other parties. The service provider remains accountable for ISO IEC 20001 conformance. What this means for scope: scope decisions can include activities performed by other parties, provided the service provider can demonstrate control. The certification covers the SMS managed by the service provider. The activities of other parties are managed through the SMS. And here is a practical application. Map the other parties early in the scope work for each scoped service. Who delivers what is an important question. How does the service provider demonstrate control over other parties? Is a key question. Specific mechanisms required by the standard. First, accountability for the processes and authority to require adherence. The service provider has the authority to require other parties to follow the processes through contracts for external suppliers, through internal agreements for internal groups. We make sure that we have an accountability. Secondly, controlling the definition of services and acceptance of new services. The service provider, not the other parties, defines what services exist and what's accepted. New services don't enter the portfolio without service provider approval. Thirdly, managing performance through agreements. Documented agreements specify what other parties deliver and to what standard. Performance is monitored against agreements. Issues are escalated and resolved. And fourthly, managing improvements. Improvements identified anywhere in the chain feedback into the SMS. The service provider drives improvement, not just operates services as is. So as a practitioner application, these four mechanisms together demonstrate control, and when advising clients, ensure each one is in place. Scope requirements at practitioner level. Several specific points are worth knowing precisely. First, certification can only be awarded to a single legal entity. So even if the scope covers multiple companies under common ownership, the certificate is issued to one specific legal entity. Practical implications would be for multinational organizations with separate legal entities per country. Each entity needs its own certificate. Second, process names are irrelevant. What matters is existence, content, quality, and usage. So if the organization calls its incident management process something else, such as event response or service interruption handling, that's fine if the activity meets the standards requirements. Auditors don't care about names, they care about substance. Thirdly, it's irrelevant whether the services are delivered to internal or external customers. Both internal IT departments and external commercial providers can be certified. The standard does not favor one model. Fourth, service providers does not need to own the infrastructure. Many providers operate services on infrastructure they don't own. Cloud platforms, hosted facilities, customer supplier environments are a few examples. Ownership is not required. Management through SMS is what is required. So from a practitioner perspective, these principles, they enable scope decisions in unusual situations. Continuing on scope requirements, the evidence and documentation dimension. So during audit, the service provider must provide evidence that all requirements applicable in the scope are confirmed. Notice the must, not should. The standard is unambiguous. Well, what kind of evidences are we talking about? Process descriptions covering all Clause 8 processes. Records demonstrating processes are operating, such as incident records, change records, audit reports, management review minutes, etc. Monitoring data showing performance against objectives. Documented agreements with customers and suppliers. Service catalogs, configuration data, and evidence must cover the full life cycle, not just cover current operations. The auditor will sample across time periods, looking for consistent operation over months. As a practitioner application, two specific scope-related evidence consideration. First, evidence for outsourced parties, and second, evidence for distributed operations. In the case of the first one, if parts of the processes are operated by other parties, the service provider must still provide evidence for those activities. And in the second one, if scope covers multiple locations, evidence must be available across them.